the highest rate of success in entrepreneurs are the entrepreneurs who come from licensed fields, which means what? They are the quote unquote either blue collar or white collar workers, it doesn't really matter, but they come from a field that requires a license. And what does that mean? Medicine, plumbing, electrician, engineer, CPA, accountant, all these things. Now, when you look at it in a nutshell, it doesn't make sense. But when you dig down onto it, is that why does having a skill set, or if I use another word, a trade, important in entrepreneurship? Is because these people don't start out as being entrepreneurs. They don't wake up and they're entrepreneurs. Okay. They go and they acquire a particular skill. They work in that field. They identify a gap that needs filling, and then they open a business to fill that particular gap.
Hi, I am Wambui and From, a corporate girl who also has multiple passions. When I'm not at my 9 to 5, I spend time focusing on growing my small side business that I love. I created From Stuck to Unstoppable podcast to give you simple, actionable strategies to help you get unstuck from limiting beliefs and find your purpose. If you're a professional, a 9-to-5er, or an aspiring entrepreneur and are looking to get out of your comfort zone, use your God-given talents and passion, you, my friend, are in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of From Stuck to Unstoppable podcast. I am your host, Wambui and From. Now, I am in awe of the massive presence that my guest has established for himself and his business, and the impact that he has made throughout his career. My guest's name is Dr. David Wachira. He's a finance and economist specialist. Now, David has a very impressive background, from very humble beginnings in Kenya to moving to the US at the age of 7 and working at the World Bank, where he managed and supported multi-billion-dollar programs in 38 countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa. And now, David is a CEO and co-founder of his own bank, so from the World Bank to being a banker. What I find most valuable is David's passion for giving back to the community, and you're going to learn more about that during this conversation. And so, my friends, without further ado, please help me in welcoming my new friend, Dr. David Wachira. Hi there, David. Thank you so much for being on my show.
It's a pleasure, Wambui. It's definitely a pleasure.
Very good. So for those who don't know you, please tell my listeners who you are and what you do.
So my name is David Wachira. I'm from Kenya originally, born and raised, and then grew up in the United States. My professional background is in economics and finance. My PhD is in public finance. Went to school in Texas, and that's where I found my calling for finance, and specifically more so in economic development. Prior to that, I was, right after that, I was a college professor. So taught at university in the United States, SMU, Southern Methodist University, University of North Texas, Wiley College, taught mainly macro and microeconomics, history, and political science. And also did a variety of things within the academic field, and then left academia and went to the World Bank, where I spent 10 years at the World Bank working as an economist or public sector specialist. And then after the World Bank, started my own bank called Waya, and that's what I have been doing since.
That's impressive. So tell me a little bit about that journey from Kenya to the US, and why did you take the path of economics and ending up in World Bank?
Well, for me, I really, first of all, let me just start off by saying the World Bank and the UN, IMF were common household names growing up in developing countries. So you always interacted with them, or at least you heard them on the news. So when I went to my graduate work and my master's, I studied, my thesis was focused on economic development. And more specifically, I was looking at how can you promote society and wealth building, and it's the only way to do that with economic aid, foreign economic aid to be exact. And my argument was, though it's important and helpful, and it has helped make a difference in a lot of countries, it's just palliative, and you need to have something from within with a strong focus on wanting to better ourselves. So that gave me a strong focus and a fix on economic development, and I was passionate about it. And so when I went in to do my PhD, I specifically focused on public policy and on public finance. With the goal of going to work for either the fund, the IMF, or the World Bank or UNDP, and then using those skill sets and coming in back home in Kenya, for example, where I am, and working in a lot of avenues. So that's how I got initially interested in economic development.
Right. It sounds like you were very intentional. You knew what you wanted to go to do in the US and bring back to Kenya. Was that something that you were intentional about?
I would argue so. I mean, perhaps maybe I'm going to tell a lot of young people or people who are starting out in their career, I was intentional about what I wanted to do, but I did not know the specific job I would be doing. So I didn't orient my career or my education towards a job. I oriented it towards a field, knowing that within that particular field, there are multiple different jobs that I could do, but at least it helped me figure out the direction. So for example, I knew I was headed north, and within north, these are the general fields with that. So I knew chemistry, biology, physics, all those were headed south or east or west. So they were not the direction I was heading. And so for a lot of young people, I tell them, even when you're starting out school or when you're looking for a career, you don't have to know the job that you will do when you finish. And in fact, most people, if you ask them, the variety of people, I mean, 90% and above, end up working in fields that they did not study. So you have people who did MBA and they're working, in a health. You have people who did health and they're working in tourism. You have people who did hospitality management and they're working in banking, particularly in the US, because usually what tends to happen is the job that you get out of college, or the job, the quote unquote formal job, is the one that you tend to develop and grow into. And people do it for a variety of reasons. One, because they feel the responsibility of life catches up and it's too late to start making a career move. So you're already established, you're earning good money. You're like, yeah, I mean, I really didn't want to end up in hospitality management, but that's where I got a job. Or I studied health, but I got a job as a cashier in a bank and then rose up to a loan officer. But that's not really what I wanted to do. But at that particular time, I'm 28, 29, I'm married, I'm thinking about kids, or I'm in my 30s, and you're like, okay, the responsibility of life has caught up. I can't start making decisions that I could have easily made when I was by myself, as a kid. So that's why a lot of people may find it difficult to switch. But what I say is that you can still be very intentional, at least be intentional with the field, and then focus on that particular field, because people end up focusing on a particular job and they're disappointed when they don't get that job. So for example, you studied finance and you wanted to become a banker. That was a job. So you apply at equity, KCB, Bank of America, but then you don't get that job and then you're disappointed. But what I tell people is like, there are so many fields within the finance and banking industry. You don't necessarily have to be, you can be a banker without ever working at a bank. Before that, there are multiple other ways to work in the industry. And once you become aware of that notion, then your mind becomes more open. So you're like, oh, by the way, I can work in banking, but not necessarily be a banker, or I can be a banker, but not necessarily be in banking. These things they're not what's the word, mutually exclusive. Yeah.
Right. That's very, very, very. That's very good information, and that's very smart.
Yeah.
Focus on the field, not on the job.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your transition from Kenya to the States. How was that?
So I came to the United States a long time ago, 27 years ago, actually. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But It was my father who came to the United States first. He was sent by the National Council of Churches of Kenya. And so he was in the United States for that particular purpose, and he was on a scholarship. After he finished the scholarship, the school liked his performance, and they gave him another scholarship where he was allowed to bring his family. And so that's how we came to the United States. So, and we all came with a particular purpose. We're all students, every single one of us, from my mom to my dad to the three of us. So that's how we came. Of course, there was a significant avenue of cultural shocks, settlement. We were also very poor. We were not able to work. We were focusing on school. So some very, very difficult times, especially 1997 to 2006, before my parents actually finished their education and studies, and then they got quote unquote formal jobs within their respective fields. It was a very difficult time. But nonetheless, we knew at least the direction where we were headed, and there was a purpose to the sacrifice. So that at least made it a little bit better, knowing that, yeah, this too shall pass.
This too shall pass. So it sounds like your parents also had, as much as you have this intention and what you wanted to do, the field you wanted to focus on, did this something, is this something that came from your parents also? It sounds like
it's something that came from my parents. So one, our parents allowed us to be experimental when it comes to fields. So no one was told you need to be a doctor, you need to be an engineer, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be a banker. It's just you need to be something. That something is for you to decide, and usually decide that based on the skill sets, your passions, and what you're good at. So, don't say I want to become a doctor, but then I'm failing organic chemistry, because then, those
don't go together.
They don't go together. So first identify what it is that you're good at, see whether that part that you're good at has some intersection with your passion. And passion is broad, and our passion as a family was helping people. So from different avenues, whether it's in health, whether it's in finance, like I am, it's like, let your life be a life of service, whatever field that may be in, and also being shown that regardless of whether you're in agriculture, whether you're a psychologist, whether you're in finance, your life can be of service within your respective fields because you have those talents that you can give back to the community. So my dad had his own respective field. He was, of course, an ordained church minister, and that's what he is professionally. My mom started off working for the government, at least in Kenya. And then when she moved to the United States, went back to school, or rather finished school, for college, and discovered the health field, and became a pediatric nurse. So everybody was going, or at least on their own school sets, and Monday through Friday, everyone was picking up a backpack and going. So we saw our parents go to school, so it was natural for us to go to school as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So everybody has a backpack, going to school Monday to Friday, doing homework, all of you together. Was that the case?
Yeah, doing homework, all of us together. Yeah, the dining table was always like, you had dad's PhD's dissertation, and you had, Elizabeth's algebra books, my history books, mom's nursing books. Priscilla was a lot younger at the time, so her books were more coloring books, but they were still all there.
That's amazing. That's good. So was that, so there must have been some kind of comfort in knowing that you're all doing this together, and maybe even not only comfort, but knowing that there was support from each other, right?
Yeah, there was support, and everybody was held accountable, from my father to Priscilla. So on the back of our fridge, at the end of the semester, everybody put their grades there, and so we were able to discuss performances. So if you're getting too many B's, or if you have a C, we need to address it. Is it not enough food, not enough time? What is going on? So
and you get put on a performance improvement plan.
Yeah, an early intervention.
That must have been interesting. So I'm sure your parents worked hard not to bring the C's or the D's.
Yes, yeah. And if they were definitely able to do it, and they were not only working but also going to school, then we as ourselves had no reason why we could not or should not perform, because at least we were not having to do any work, particularly in college at the time.
Right. Your job was to go to school. That's it. That's what we tell our kids. Your only job is to go to school, not to pay the bills, only school. So that's interesting. Okay, let's talk about your transition now from college to World Bank. That's a very, I would think it's hard to get to World Bank. How was that journey?
No, it's very difficult to get to the World Bank. Definitely not for the faint of hearted, and but it's still it's still possible. Is what I tell people, not to be discouraged if they want to work for the World Bank. They can work for the World Bank, but also understand probability and the likelihood of getting in. And if you don't get in, don't take it as a personal measure against your capabilities. Just understand that there are a variety of reasons that may not have lined up for you to get in. Of course, it's a very prestigious organization. It's also a very difficult one to get into because it's familiar, and so a lot of people are applying. But I knew that I wanted to work in development. For a long time. I applied for the World Bank internship program in 2012 and didn't get in. And then I applied for the World Bank Young Professionals program, which is like the Navy SEALs part of the World Bank, and got in. And so that just tells you that all you have to do is, continue apply and apply yourself. Of course, the program I came into was, I don't want to use the word elite, but it is designed for the management track, and has been designed specifically to cater to a particular demographic across the world. Typically, they tend to be newly minted PhDs or people with master's, well, definitely at least minimum master's degrees plus 5 years of experience, or a PhD, and usually under the age of 32, because that's the cutoff. So there's a difficult accomplishments to acquire just from a time phase, which means that you need to have been finishing your school and very driven much earlier on. But I was one of 8,300 applicants. So I got in. So it just gives to show that, if you apply yourself, you can get in. And when I got into the World Bank, at least when I was going through the transition of getting into the World Bank, because a lot of times our capacity is limited by the perceptions we put about ourselves, so when I went from 8,300 to 1,200 in terms of the selection process, and then from 1,200 to 192. I thought, hey, well, even if I don't get in, it's a pretty remarkable odds. So I started applying to areas where the odds were better. So I applied to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Cleveland School of Public Policy, UNC Chapel Hill, Ohio State. I was applying for professor positions, by the way, at this particular time. And I said, well, there are 8,000 people applying for this position at the World Bank. Even if there are many applying for the Harvard one, there are a couple of hundred. So the probability is slightly better. So February of 2013, I spent a lot of time on the road because I got a lot of interviews for these places that I had applied to. So UNC Chapel Hill, Ohio State, Cleveland, School of Public Policy, and a lot of other places. And then got offers from these places as well, as I was waiting for the World Bank, but eventually ended up choosing the World Bank. And I applied for the World Bank in March of 2012. It took 18 months for the selection process. And in September of 2013, I started at the World Bank, September 9th of 2013. And I spent 10 years at the World Bank, covered 38 countries, went to 63 countries all over the place. Started off in Europe and Central Asia, and picked up Russian, немного понимаю по-русски, because I took 4 years of Russian when I was in Eastern Europe. Then went to Anglophone West Africa, covered Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, was part of the Ebola response team in 2014. Did some amazing stuff, covered Mauritius, Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Tanzania, Ceylon, Sri Lanka, oh my gosh, so many countries. India, spent a good bit of time in Kyrgyz Republic, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Azerbaijan, the whole Balkan states. The only place that I did not work in, the only part of the globe that I did not work in is Latin America. So so as a result, I visited Latin America several times, went for the World Cup in Brazil. I just came back from the Caribbean, spent a good bit of time in Colombia and a few other places, Mexico, and North America and Canada as well. So those are the areas of the globe that I did not work in, but the rest of the globe, Europe, Central Asia, Africa, the Western Pacific island states, did a good bit of that, Fiji, Maldives. So you go to very remote places. Yeah. The World Bank has 165 country offices and about 189 country member states, at least at last count. So it was a thrilling and exciting opportunity, and I always wanted to come back and work in Africa after that. So what I was doing going across these countries was picking up tidbits of experience and learning different ways, learning different languages, learning different government approaches, public policy, finance expert, and then worked across many different sectors as well, health, education, energy and extractives, agriculture, climate change. So did a good bit things over the course of 10 years. That's one of the benefits and one of the things that I really like about the World Bank. It's a very huge institution. And even if I was there, you feel as if you've picked up a new job because just working across those 38 countries, for example, you may be doing the same project. It's a finance project, but different people, different dynamics, different governments, different cultures, different parts of the world. So each time I moved to a new country, it was, it was a completely new experience. And so every single time it felt like, your job was always just so lively because you never knew what could happen. Yeah. So it was. And I love working with countries, particularly institutions. It was always fun. So got to meet presidents, prime ministers, economic ministers, were the ones who I mainly worked into. Got to write some really amazing policies that are still in use today, where you can see the impact of your work, and particularly see that part come to fruition and influence that. Even in Kenya, and you're like, oh yeah, I was part of the team that brought this particular thing, and you're listening to things, and you're like, yeah, I mean, you really felt the large part of the work that you're doing, and it was an exhilarating journey. I really enjoyed it.
I am so mind blown. I don't even know where to start. I mean, how many countries? I mean, I guess sometimes when you can ask someone, okay, how many countries have you gone to in the world? Have you visited? I guess for you, it's how many countries have you not visited in the world?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I mean, it's very interesting because two caveats. In the last 2 weeks, I've been to 5 countries, and it got to be confusing because I went to the customs officer and he goes, "Where are you coming from?" And I was like, "Are you coming from I'm coming from the Grand Cayman. What were you doing there?" And I was like, "Well, I wasn't meant to be there." I was like, and then you sound like you don't know what you're talking about because people don't go to countries and don't remember, or go to countries accidentally. And then the other part, I was filling out a visa application to go to Turkey. I remember one time. This is after I left the bank, and then there was a question that asked, "Give us over the last 5 years, give us your travel history for the last 5 years." And they give you this small spot, and I filled out all the ones that came to my mind, and then I had to go get all my 3 passports because they tell you, yeah. Because they tell you failure to whatever, this is like, so. Yeah. So I went and got because I couldn't remember. I got my 3 passports, and then I was starting to looking at the stamps over the last 5 years, and I was like, okay, because in 5 years I've had 5 passports, because they get full, and so
amazing. Yeah.
when you're like that, and so yeah, I mean, to your question, I think I'm just crossing. I don't remember now. I have a map at the world. Mm-hmm. So what I used to do is when I used to go to these countries, I would always get something, like get an artifact or something. But after like the 15th country, my house started filling up with so many things. So then I stopped getting artifacts, and I would only get an artifact if it was like really moved to like something like majestic, amazing. So I started getting a magnet from every single country I've been in. So the whole entire fridge filled up of the thing. And though I went on Etsy, and there was a guy who made a chalkboard, and he can make a magnetic chalkboard. And I said, "Can you make me a magnetic chalkboard?" He goes, "What for?" "I want to put magnets." And he goes, "How big do you want it to be?" I said, as big as you can get it. And it's roughly the size of it's bigger than a refrigerator door, just to put it in perspective. And at this last move, it was full of magnets. So then I said, okay, now I can't get magnets anymore because even those are too many. So I started. I went and got a world map, and then I started with a scratch off, and I started scratching off the countries that I've been into. And I think at last count, I was on number 73. So I have to, sometimes I don't remember. So I have to, like this time, I went to 5 countries. Of those 5 countries, and I went to the same country twice within 1 week, but it was the first time I'd been there. So I went there, I was there for 2 days. I was there for a day, left. And then the customs officer was like, "Why did you leave?" I said, "Well, I have a meeting." That's why I was going to meet President Ruto. I had a meeting in Atlanta. So I had to go fly and then come back. And so when I came back, because I had left my wife there, when I came back, I didn't have any luggage. I just had, so it goes, how long are you staying in the Grand Cayman? I said 1 week. And they got my laptop bag, and I had a suit that I was just carrying on a hanger. And in my laptop bag, there was a pair of pants and a pair of socks. And they said, "Where are your clothes?" And, so I went to like a secondary inspection, and you're really, really suspicious. It's like, how are you traveling?
Very suspicious here.
Yeah, you're traveling to a country, and you say you're here for a week, and you only have one suit, and it's in the Caribbean, huh? Like people are going for the beach. So it's like, no. I was like, I was here, my wife is here, they're already vacationing. I'm just now joining them. And then she goes, "Oh, so they're having all the fun." Yes. But
that's amazing.
no, I mean it's good. It's interesting. I mean, I like it. So one of the things, I mean, to take away, I mean, people would think of the fun and the laughter, and there have been places that I've gone to that I really never want to go back. I won't mention them here because I don't want trolls on YouTube. But there's some places I would hear I'm going, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not going to be fun. And you travel so much to where you become jaded. So people are really excited about going to new places. I'm not, because very few things now, at least when it comes to travel, just travel, very few things wow me. So now when I go for travel, even if I'm going to a new place, I don't do, you rarely find me doing the tourist stuff. Like tonight, when we're getting in a car and then we're going to go drive around and see all these sites. I don't do that anymore. I go and I'll just go to the place. I'll enjoy the people. I'll enjoy the culinary aspect. I'll interact with the people. For me, I'm now a cultural expedition.
Right.
And it'll be purely rest and relaxation. I remember I was in Paris, and I was just flying through. I had a layover for 7 hours, and one of my friends was there, and I said, "Hey, I'm in Paris. Let's meet up." And she was like, "Yeah, come to Paris." I was like, no, you come to the airport. So like, because you said you're coming all the way to Paris and you're not leaving the airport. I was like, I have no interest or desire to leave. I've seen Paris. I've been to Paris multiple different times. The last thing I want to do is get stuck in traffic and end up missing my flight. So you come to the airport. So you came to the airport. We didn't meet because I was in the international, so I had to leave. So I actually left, got my passport stamped, went to the restaurant in the airport, met for tea, and then went back to immigration, got the passport stamp. And then some very funny things in that you do them just for the sake of doing them. I was in Belgium And my wife said, you know, what's Belgium famous for? Chocolates. Get me some chocolates. And I was like, babe, I have a 5 hour layover. I don't want to be like, I can buy you stuff from
It'll
the
be
airport.
melting.
And I was like, yeah, I was like, no, I'll be romantic. So I went to immigration, and he goes, what brings you to Belgium? And I told the guy, my wife wanted chocolates. So, and he looked at me, he goes, are you serious? It's like, yeah, you're just going to buy chocolates to come back? It's like, yes.
Oh, David, I love your life. I like this. Just
So
going to Belgium
he
to buy
stamped
chocolate.
he stamped my passport. I went, got the chocolates, came back, coincidentally ran into the same guy, and he goes, where are the chocolates? And I lift him
Right here.
up. And I had left my bag in there, you know, the locker. So I got the bag, went back into the thing, met
Yeah.
my the team, and then they was like, well, now I can say I've been to Belgium. Here's a stamp.
It's a stamp
It's like,
and chocolate.
yeah, and chocolate. And that's all I did. I just went in and
Yeah.
took to the city, went to a chocolate shop, got chocolate, came back, and
That's
and flew
amazing.
out. Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
what I was saying is that you become a little bit jaded, unfortunately. And you always have to remind yourself. It's something you have to remind yourself that people may not have this experience and may not have this viewpoint. The best thing we can do is to create opportunities for people, and that's why I work in development in terms of it. In terms of, okay, this was a sheer stroke of luck, dare say, divine intervention, because I'm a believer. But then I have to ask myself, why was I given this opportunity? I was given this opportunity so that I can extend other people's reach, so that I can make their lives better. So if I'm just doing all this so that I can go to random airports and buy Belgian chocolates, then I've missed the whole entire purpose of life and why this blessing was given to me. And that's why I predominantly and still choose to work in development, even after I left the bank, in terms of social impact and empowerment for people.
Right. Now that is so good, and I'm glad that we are laughing here about going to Belgium to buy chocolate, but you made a big impact. I know that with your work. So it's not just about hopping into different countries. It's fun to do that, but at the end of it, I know you do have quite a purpose, and you've made a big impact, and we're just so proud of you. Those of us
Oh,
who know
thank you.
us who know you. So tell me, well, so here you are in this job at World Bank, and you're going to different countries, and obviously here you are. We're going to be honest and say you're Black and you're wearing a turban. People, are you feeling, a little bit of that imposter syndrome that I shouldn't be here? Did that ever happen to you? Like, who am I? Like, are you pinching yourself and like, who am I to be doing?
So I wouldn't say I know I personally, I have not felt as an imposter. At least for me, I wouldn't use that word. Largely because I was profoundly, I believe in selection by merit, and the notion was not to say that there are not a lot of problems, and there are a lot of problems, particularly when it comes from a ratio observation. And that's why I went back to the aspect of, can we have an equal playing field for opportunities? When you have, and one of the cool things about the YP aspect is that it tends to be, it still has its flaws as a World Bank YP, but it's definitely a merit-based position. And one of the things with that is, even when I went in, is to say, hey, there were 8,300 applicants. From those 8,300, 36 were selected. From those 36, 2 were of African descent, myself, and another one of my friends who was an American citizen, but of African descent. So I went to the office and I said, we can't be out of the whole entire continent. For this year, we came 2. I know there's 36. Even if we're doing it by a quota system based on population, there should be more Africans. And I said, but there are 4 Italians. Okay, 4 Italians, 2 English, 3 French, and 2 Indians. And I'm like, okay, even by sheer population aspect, if we're going to say, okay, hey, look, let's kind of like the World Cup, huh? Make it and I'm not saying we make it a quarter-based system, but at least you make it at least what I was challenging the environment was like, it is not reflective of the people that come from that particular continent, because the vast majority of the work is in developing countries. So from this 36, statistically, most of us are not from developing countries. And I'm not saying that you can't be from a developed country and work in development. Don't get me wrong. I believe you definitely can. But I'm saying we need to create a level playing field when it comes to opportunities. And also, sometimes, because of focusing on significant issues when it comes to people being denied the option, we need to make it more equitable. So they need to be given more and more chances in order to catch up. And I was very happy that that didn't fall on deaf ears, because the following year there were 5 from Kenya.
Oh, really?
And I said, then the notion was, okay, maybe now when I meant about equity, I didn't mean necessarily when Africa, it's not Africa and Kenya. Yeah, Kenya is in Africa, but Kenya is not Africa. So, but there were more. There were eight total from Africa the following year. So 8 out of 53, I was like, that's much better than 2 out of 36. So significant progress. And that means that we were being heard. And on top of it, the other argument that I made was, I went to school in the US, which is fine, and I'm Kenyan, but I went to school in the US. The 2 of us who came in from that year came from United States schools. Okay, so we would just happen to be Africans who spend a lot of time in the US. I said, surely we have PhDs from Nairobi University who can meet this caliber of expectation. And that's the argument. Can we start not only get more Africans, but can we get a lot more locally produced Africans?
Okay.
And the reason being is that we have the capacity to do so, and so why not? So to your question, did I ever feel the imposter syndrome? No, but I did severely notice when I was an outlier, and that was in multiple places. Now, the World Bank is very interesting because just by the way it's designed, there are not so many. It's very cosmopolitan. Let me put it into perspective. If you're inside the World Bank, which is in Washington, D.C., at least the World Bank HQ, you don't often hear an American accent. Of the 18,000 employees there, not very many Americans. Okay, and the ones who are there, there are some who are there, quite a number of them. It's because just by virtue of the education system, most Americans don't go into development. And the ones who do have a unique story behind it. They either had an international exchange student who came and stayed with them and opened their eyes to, oh my gosh, there is more than us. Or they were in the Peace Corps or something like that, those type of stories. But the average American, and not only generalized, but the average American does not study economic development, or even when they study public health, they don't do it from a global health perspective. They look at it from their own particular lens. The average person studying public health in Kenya or in Nigeria is looking at it from a very global population health, maternal health, this type of problems that we are undergoing. So you have a lot of Europeans, you have a lot of Africans, you have a lot of Asians, you have a lot of Latin Americans. And so it's a very big cosmopolitan aspect, but still then not very many people of color, and at least relative to the entire World Bank employee population. And then the ones who are there don't necessarily, there are a few cases, Maktar, more than a few cases, Maktar, who is the MD for IFC, and there are others, people like myself, but you find them in the lower ranks, middle management, definitely not upper management. And that's something that, constantly has to be worked on. Now, like any other institution, it is a reflection of what's happening in society. We do expect the World Bank and the IMF and others, these leaders, to be better. But at the end of the day, from an intellectual and just from an observation perspective, they will look like the society that general. So if there is whitewashing, there will be whitewashing at the World Bank, because the society is made up of those same people. If Black people are being marginalized out in society, you would expect them to be marginalized also in that. But I do give higher credence of we need to be better than that for these organizations. One, because people are remarkably smart and remarkably well educated, and so I expect better from them because they have the capacity to be able to see, you know, injustices and say, hey, this is something we need to rectify. Kind of like to whom much is given, much more is required type of thing. You should be the leaders. If society, we don't want society to look like this, it needs to start from our own institutions. Yeah, and then we will start to affect society. But we can't say, oh, you guys, you need more people of color in leadership, and then the institution itself doesn't have a person of color, which is great because maybe look at the kind of World Bank president, he looks very much like me, who has a turban. So it's we're not from the same faith, but
I think you inspired him. He was like, if he can work there, so can I.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of element, and of course we champion it and we do work to it. And then within the countries, I think there's a lot of things that institutions like the World Bank can push back from some of this, you know, aspects that may happen at the country level, where countries may ask, oh no, we need a white country director, or don't send us an African country director because someone is based in Thailand or in India or in whatever. So these are some of the things that I think as institutions we can fight back. So from an imposter syndrome, I didn't feel as an imposter, but I definitely noticed. I did pinch myself in terms of like, oh, is this real? Is this really happening? You know, because even when I look at my fellow classmates who did PhDs, they didn't end up with that particular place, and then there's like those of us, I joke, those of us familiar with the law of large numbers, more particularly probability, were like, the chances of me being here are slim to none. The fact that it happened, you know, there is a general purpose to it, and I can't be ignorant of that purpose.
Beautiful. That's awesome. Very good. So now you transitioned into entrepreneurship. Let's talk about what you do currently and tell us about Waya.
Yeah, so I transitioned into entrepreneurship. I left the World Bank. I was a World Banker, and then dropped the world part and just became a banker. It's a joke.
So, I like that. Okay, now you're a banker.
Yeah, now I'm a banker, not a world banker, but I'm a banker. But I wanted to continue development. I'm now continuing development differently. The World Bank, for all its, you know, some of its problems, at least for me, does have a role to play in certain sectors. But then at the grassroots, this is where some of these large organizations failed. And I felt it was time for me to step up to the more grassroots aspect, because they're not as agile. They're big 20,000 people institution can't be as agile as an institution of 50 people in terms of adapting and risk aversion, for example. So I moved in when I was at the bank. Of course, one of the things that you do as you start to mature, you start to think more about your financial well-being. Well, you should still think about it from a young age, but you start to pay more attention. It's like, oh, maybe I should do some investments. Maybe I need to buy something. You know, maybe I need to save for retirement. I need to look at pensions. And you start doing these things, and I realized that financial access and financial inclusion is not very commonplace amongst our people, largely because the institutional and rails that govern finances don't look like us, and just the reality of it. And so I thought, if I want to help the community when it comes to financial access, based from my own challenges of being an immigrant in the United States and my path to financial access, what can I do? And I thought to myself, well, you can start a financial institution and make that particular change that you want to do in society. And so that's essentially how Waya was born. So we like to say Waya, banking built for immigrants, minorities, and underserved communities. And we believe that there are, well, we believe statistics and data show that there are a number of people who are underserved, underbanked, and often overlooked by the traditional banking channels. And so we come in, and our goal is to work within this particular communities, among the immigrant communities, among the minority-based communities, and help them with their path to financial access. And we do that one in two ways. One, by making financial products that understand the challenges that they themselves undergo with. So that's one. And, we tell people it's difficult for a lot of people, even for us now we've been banked. It's difficult for us to imagine a time before we had bank accounts. But for some people, they don't have to imagine. And even if they do have bank accounts, it is difficult for them to imagine wealth building and wealth creation because they lack the tools. One, they may not have the know-how. But two, the system is unfortunately designed for them to start on the back foot. Wells Fargo, it's known for its racist practices, opening fake accounts, and marginalizing people of color when it comes to mortgages. Something that my particular family, my mom, underwent when she applied for a mortgage at Wells Fargo. That, unfortunately, is what happens still in 2023 and 2024. And so we said, we can do better, and we will be better, and we will be that financial institution that is focusing on these communities. But beyond just giving them access to finances, can we help in our own small way empower those communities by giving them the tools and the resources they need? Not just the financial tools. In terms of by financial tools, I mean helping them open a bank account and opening a bank account. But yeah, I can come and tell you, Wambui, open a bank account at Waya, and you open a bank account. But does that really help you if I don't take you to the next step and say, Wambui, this is how you build wealth? There's something called credit. There is something called a credit score. There's a credit history. This is how it works. This is how it impacts you. This is what happens when you live on the margins of outside the credit system, when you're paying for cash, which may seem like a good thing, but this is what happens when you paying for your rent in cash. It's not recorded. So as a result, there is no history. And because there's no history, you're not able to borrow because the bank looks at you as a risky aspect. This is how you get financial instruments. This is how you think about retirement, because people think about, either they don't think about retirement or they think of money markets as something that, that's for the rich. So you build this financial literacy tools into the product for people who are either at Waya or elsewhere. I mean, yesterday we had a financial literacy class. None of the people on that class were Waya customers, but we offer it for free to the community and empower them and say, we are here for you. We're that financial institution that will be at your neighborhood, that will be at your events, that will come in, not because they just want to sell you a product, but because they really care about your starting point because they were there and they remember what it is like not to have a credit history and to have to put a 6-month down payment on an apartment because you don't have a credit history, or to try to set up utilities, or to try and get a cell phone, but you don't have a credit history. And that's the first time you're hearing about it. Oh, you don't fully understand it. Or you want to buy a house and get a mortgage, and you go to the bank and they tell you, well, you're subprime. What does that mean? You need to get your credit score above 740. How do you get your credit score above 740? Those are things that are not communicated, and they take it for granted amongst our communities, particularly amongst people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and other people of color. So that's how we transitioned into Waya. God has been good. We've grown significantly. We launched in May 2023. We just crossed 10,000 users. We encourage your users to sign up. It's pretty easy. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes. You go on Google Play Store or on Apple Play Store, download our app. In about 5 to 7 minutes, your checking account is open. We have peer-to-peer transfers, debit cards, and pretty soon we'll be doing remittances, credit building, and savings accounts and other line facilities. So we are really passionate about the work and really, really excited. And we want to really be change makers when it comes to impact. And I close at least this particular part of the story with this, is that when we think of making a difference, we often think of the Nelson Mandelas and the Gandhis and so forth. We usually don't think of making a difference by utilizing our talents. But we each have a talent and we each have a role to play in the betterment of the community. For myself, I realized that my talent is a profound understanding of finance, and I can use it to just elevate me, myself, and my family, or I can use it to elevate the community who have educated me because it's their shoulders so I stood on.
This episode is brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Thrive From Stuck to Unstoppable. Thrive From Stuck to Unstoppable is a most comprehensive program for overcoming limiting beliefs so you can confidently take charge of your life and career. This newly updated program is the only step-by-step approach that holistically assesses your level of fulfillment and satisfaction in the key areas of your life. This is going to help you foster a bulletproof mindset so you can have clarity, let go of fear, and those memorized patterns that are keeping you stuck from being the person that you are created to be, so you can be your most authentic self and build the confidence you need to succeed in your life and career. So to sign up for the next cohort of this group coaching program, all you need to do is go to www.wambuimboro.com/thrive, and that is www.wambuimburu.com/thrive. I can't wait to see you in class.
For me, I look back to the community and say, we can move from here to here, and this is how we do it, and let's chart out a path for doing so. And that's why we created Waya, and we believe heavily in impact. And I would be remiss if I didn't say we're raising a $5 million round, and we're taking investors. So if anyone is interested in investing, they can let us know. They can shoot us a message at invest@wayapay.com or at my email, wachira@wayapay.com. Wayapay is WAYAPAY.com. The company is called Waya, which is a Swahili word for the English word wire. So it's a play on word. So, right. Yeah.
Beautiful. First of all, congratulations. That's a bold move.
Thank you.
And happy anniversary for Waya.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm very, very, very just so proud of what you're doing. It's sometimes I don't even know what to put in words. So Waya is obviously it's online. It's not just in Kenya. Is it just in Kenya?
No. So this actually right now our services are only in the United States. We haven't rolled out in Kenya yet. So this in the US. So you can open a checking account in the US. We have, of course, our banking partners who help us with that.
Okay.
MasterCard is a big partner, a strategic partner at Waya, so our debit cards are MasterCard. But as we stand as of 2024, the checking accounts are only available in the United States. So they are, member FDIC, insured to the $250,000 US maximum, just like any other checking account in Bank of America or Chase. So opening at Waya is roughly the same thing. You open, you sign up, you get your debit card mailed out to you in 3 to 5 business days. You can link it to Google Play or Google Wallet or Apple Pay. Use it essentially anywhere. MasterCards are expected. You can link Wire to your direct deposit. You can receive your salaries from there. You can do ACHs. You can do wires. You can essentially pretty much use it as any other bank account. We are expanding broadly. So as we like to think of ourselves our first focus was on the immigrant community because that's where we are. But then we worked in the minorities and underserved communities. But essentially, we'll be rolling out in Kenya as well, and in Africa, and Europe and Middle East. But our base right now is out of the US. So anyone in the US can open an account with us.
Beautiful. I will make sure that we link all that information in our show notes. Now, before I let you go, David, and I could talk to you for a very long time because you're very interesting to talk to. Tell me, so most of my listeners, they are aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals who they want to get out of their comfort zone and do something maybe bigger than they would even imagine, but they hold themselves back. What is it that they can do to stop holding themselves back? What tools?
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur. I have 56 employees now, and run 7 companies, Waya being one. But I never, ever intended on being an entrepreneur. That was not my calling. That was not the area I was going in. It was not even at all in my purview. But what got me entrepreneurship was the fact that I want to do impactful work. Now, for me, it was an easy journey. I can give you my journey, and everybody's journey is different. But for me, it was a slightly easy journey because one, I knew what we wanted to do, and I was deeply passionate about it from a calling perspective. We never intended to become a financial institution, by the way. That was not the plan. The plan was, there is this issue when it comes to financial access. Let us tell the financial institutions about it and help them solve this particular thing. But then that was falling on deaf ears. And then we thought, okay, why don't we do something about it? We have identified the problem. They don't need to be solution makers in this problem. Why don't we do something about it? And I thought about it for a long time. I mean, because who leaves formal employment to go start an entrepreneur, to start a business? That's crazy. On top of it, who leaves the World Bank of all places?
I know.
To go and be an entrepreneur. It's crazy. It's, but I went to my friends, my close friends, and who I told the idea that I wanted to do. And I remember talking to my friend Renzo, and I said, I have this idea. And then he said, say no more. How much do you need? And most of us don't have friends like that,
Friend to have.
which is okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we put together our own resources to start this because, for one, we believed and still believe that an idea ceases to become a noble idea when it doesn't become a noble action. People think that just capital, and by capital I mean financial capital, is the only thing that can move your idea to an action. But even before we put a single dollar into it, the idea can be actualized because there are multiple different types of capital. There's social capital, the friends around you. There's a network. There is human resource capital, which is you and the input that you are. So I talked to a lot of young people and I said, okay, you have this idea. What have you done? And they said, well, I don't have the money. I said, you don't need the money to incentivize or start an idea. You just need fertile ground, to plant the seed. We can discuss the water thing later on, but first let's plant the seed. And what are you doing to get that seed planted? The other thing in terms of entrepreneurship, one should realize. Let me demystify a few things. So in the West, they like to view entrepreneurship as this newfound thing. It's like, whereas in Kenya, for example, if you use Kenya, the country that I'm most familiar with, only 9% of the population is formally employed, white collar jobs. Okay, so what does that mean for the rest of the population? Is that they're all self-employed, most of them self-employed. And you'll be hard-pressed. Actually, it's easier to name a Kenyan who is self-employed than it is to name a Kenyan who is employed. And so for us, in the West, we come in and we start, I'd say old wine, new bottles. We start calling entrepreneurship startups. And, this is this whole new thing. And we seem to disconnect it from the regular way of doing things. And I'm like, look, it doesn't matter the business, whether you're selling shoes or sending rockets to the moon, doesn't matter. The point is simple economics. Are you solving a supply and demand problem? Okay. And if you're not at the basic instruments, it doesn't really matter what that business is, it's going to fail. Is there supply and is there demand? Okay. You can have supply, but if there's no demand, if what you're selling, no one is demanding it, or you haven't convinced them that they need it, then that business is just dead on the water. Okay. That's the first number one. Number two, every single business needs a skill set. The problem I have with entrepreneurship is people think of entrepreneurship as existing in a vacuum. Like, what do you want to be, one boy? I want to be an entrepreneur. That doesn't tell me anything. It's like, what in entrepreneurship? Because entrepreneurship is just like any other career aspect. It still has to be a skill set type behind it. So you want to become a doctor who opens their own practice? That's an entrepreneur. You want to become a plumber who opens their own practice? That's an entrepreneur. You want to become a banker? You want to become an engineer? You want to become a salesman? What skill set are you bringing to that problem solving? And if you look at entrepreneurship, there was a study that was done last year, 7 out of 10 businesses in the US fail. 7 out of 10 in the US fail. Okay. They analyzed why those fail. It's not capital. Okay, it goes back to these principles: supply and demand. Are you making something that people want? Most people just come up with this lofty ideas of things they want to do. I'm like, okay, that's all good and well, really, really pretty for it to hang on your wall, but no one is interested in it. Okay, so please don't quit your job to try and sell that, because no one will buy it. Okay, so that's point number one. And then point number two, the reason why the 3 out of 10 who succeeded, they analyzed in terms of what type of entrepreneurs were there, which is an important element. Now, interesting thing, the highest rate of success in entrepreneurs are the entrepreneurs who come from licensed fields, which means what? They are the quote unquote either blue collar or white collar workers, it doesn't really matter, but they come from a field that requires a license. And what does that mean? Medicine, plumbing, electrician, engineer, CPA, accountant, all these things. Now, when you look at it in a nutshell, it doesn't make sense. But when you dig down onto it, it's like, why does having a skill set, or if I use another word, a trade, important in entrepreneurship? Is because these people don't start out as being entrepreneurs. They don't wake up and they're entrepreneurs. Okay. They go and they acquire a particular skill. They work in that field. They identify a gap that needs filling, and then they open a business on to fill that particular gap. What we do in the United States is that we try to get to the part of opening a business. You haven't asked yourself, what gap in the market am I filling? And what skill set do I need to fill that gap? Okay, so you get to speak to a lot of young people, just anyone who's like, I want to become an entrepreneur. It's like, look, it's like waking up in the morning and saying, for me, when I hear that, it's like waking up in the morning and saying, I want to become a medical doctor. And you're just going around telling people, I want to become a medical doctor. And you're not in medical school. You haven't studied a single medical book. I was like, you cannot become a medical doctor without the skill set of medicine and comes from education. So when you want to become an entrepreneur, you have to have an identifiable skill set that you're bringing to the table. And then you use that skill set to open up your business. And as you do that, you have to ask yourself, what is it from a supply and demand perspective that I'm fixing, that I'm repairing? Or in other words, what gap have I identified that I'm trying to solve? And then stand into that gap and solve that. So whether that's selling coffee on Amazon or whether it is opening a medical practice, it doesn't really matter. You can disconnect the business that you're starting, but you still need to ask yourself these questions. And Elon Musk has to ask himself this question. So he's launching satellites. Who is the buyer? NASA is the buyer. Why is there a gap there? Is a gap there because NASA's budget is stretched? Two, they have so many things that they're doing. This is something that I can specialize in. And then now NASA, which sends astronauts to the moon, can utilize my services to send people to the space station. And he fills that particular gap. Now, if he was just, or he's a billionaire, so he can essentially do what he wants. But if he was just making rockets for the sake of making rockets without necessarily saying who is buying this particular product from me, and not only is it who is it buying it, is there a particular need? Now, that's a very extreme example because it requires heavily amounts of capital. So, of course, he has to itemize and think of these things much earlier on. Us at the more lower end, where we are like, oh, it's just $5,000. I don't need to investigate. You can save yourself a lot of headache by just going and doing appropriate research, because there are multiple ways to learn, and experience is one of the most inefficient ways of learning.
Really?
It's one way to
Experience
learn.
was the best teacher.
No. Experience is the best teacher because it's a painful teacher. You for sure you will. For a lot of entrepreneurs, let me put it in a separate way. You can save yourself a lot of losses by not just learning whether or not you should do something from experience, because if you have to experience something to know whether it's good or bad, I mean, just think of the way we go around the world. If I have to experience that standing close to the ledge is bad only when I fall,
that's fine.
then yeah, it's really, really bad. And to put in another example, I don't have to fall from the second story window to know that it's a bad idea to dangle from the second story window, because there is compounded knowledge, either instinct wise or otherwise, that I can leverage on to learn that, hey, by the way, hey, Liliana Wambui, or I saw Wambui stand on that ledge and it was really painful. And because most of that nowadays is recorded,
Yeah.
I can go and read that particular part. So by the time you start your business, you can be light years ahead of people who are just starting their business 10, 20 years ago, because there's a lot of the information is at your fingertips, and information is power, and information allows you to make better decisions. Now you combine that with the experience, and there's really, really, really none stopping you. But we like to elevate experience, and experience is useful. I have nothing wrong with it. But experience is nothing more than the passage of time. It doesn't require any advanced knowledge. Yeah, you just put someone within the same context that you and I are in, give them the passage of time, and they more or less will end up in the same place you and I are, simply from that experience. That's just human nature and human development. Education, on the other hand, or learning, on the other hand, is not simply from the passage of time. You physically have to apply yourself in order to come up with that particular output. Experience is good. You say someone has 20 years of experience. Well, it's because they have lived 20 years longer than I have. That's why they have 20 years of experience. If I'm in the same field, in the same job, I will get to where they are and I can say I have 20 years of experience, okay? But not everyone may have an MBA in finance, or a doctor of medicine. I mean, and put it into another perspective. Think, we and the aspect of how, when we like to elevate experience, and let me just put it in terms of a fallacy. If we go to the doctor and we learn from the doctor that his training is purely from experience, he doesn't have any medical school, most of us will not be going to that doctor, right? Because we were like,
you're not going to be guinea pigs.
yeah, you can go experiment with someone else. Like, and there is no disconnect between theory and practice. Theory is supposed to lessen our experimentation aspect, in that you go and you learn something and you come and apply it. In closing, let me put it another way. If you went to a Kenyan school, particularly in the 844 system, you could, at least at a particular time, read music very well. I did. So I had never touched a piano until I came to the United States. But I could read music. I could identify all the keys. So when I took a music class, and the music class I took was piano, and I started playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, when the teacher put the music sheet in front of me, she goes, "Wow, have you played before?" I said, "No, but I know how to read music and I know the keys in the piano." The experience part was just getting my hands used to the dexterity, and within a week that I had. Okay, but the theory part, right? That you don't learn to read music in a week. That took a lot of time. So compared to other people who were in that class, and we started on the first day, and they were learning to not only read music on day one and play the piano, we were light years ahead. Me, come from Kenya, who had physically never seen a grand piano, right? And I was playing it like within a week, like I had grown up playing it. And that's what lessons and putting these resources into place really help you, is that they really elevate your chance of success. And that's what I would say in entrepreneurship. So don't look at entrepreneurship as it being devoid of a skill set, but when you have that skill set, it will heighten your chance of success significantly.
Beautiful. Now, David, this podcast is called From Stuck to Unstoppable, and you're just unstoppable. You are just unstoppable. And you're always you have this bright smile and just really so much joy. Do you have any low moments? I mean, what keeps you going? Where is this, passion coming from?
No, of course I have low moments. I'm a human being. I have low moments. But at least my character trait is that I've come to be a very optimist. So this glass is nearly empty, but there's a good bit of water into it. Most people would be, more upset that the glass is empty. I'm like, oh, there's water. We're making particular progress. And well, at least what I have used my life as a learning moment to is that there is so much to be grateful for. Even when we have challenges, even when we have financial challenges in our business, we have to think. What I like to do is that I don't like for problems to be reflective in my life, and by that I mean is that I don't want them to be what I see in my life, because there's a lot more to be grateful for. And once you start articulating gratefulness and start thinking about it, it's very difficult to end up sad, or to end up in a low moment. Even when you're in a low moment, I mean, I start thinking about my mom, and how her relationship has brought this conversation. I mean, you start to smile, you start to think about other difficult moments, and the fact that they have been recoverable. And when you start looking at more the blessing sides and the positive sides of things, you find that as human beings, there's that old nursery rhyme: count your blessings, name them one by one, and you'll be surprised what the Lord has done. I don't have to get to 10. By the second one, I'm pretty happy. Right?
Oh, yes.
You're like, I ate today, I wasn't hungry, and then you think of the millions of people who are going to bed hungry. A lot of things that we take for granted. Or I have a loving parent when people come from abusive relationships, and it was nothing that I did for myself. It was just the lottery of life of where I was born. There's a lot to be grateful for.
A lot to be grateful for. And we'll end this with that. There's a lot to be grateful for. I am so grateful that you made time to be in my show. I'm so grateful for your mom, your family, just making this happen. And I am grateful for what you're doing, just all these good things you're doing and what you've shared here today. It's going to be very, very helpful to my audience. Now, where can my listeners find you?
Good point. They can find me in a number of places. So on Instagram and Twitter, at my last name is Wachira, Wachira. So the Wachira is my handle. Yeah, you'll find me. Or if you type David Wachira, you'll find me. There are not very many David Wachiras with a turban. It's the same thing on LinkedIn. My email is wachira@wayapay.com. So those would be the most common places to find me. If you're interested in Waya, it's WAYA. And the website is getwaya, GETWAYA.com. And if you type it on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Waya, WAYA, you'll find it. And then my YouTube channel is Finance Dissected, and we talk about financial issues and financial access, and how people can build wealth and utilize their resources accordingly. So, yeah. And I'll type them all out and send them to you as well.
To me, we'll have them on the show notes. I really appreciate your time, Dave, but I want to have you back because there's so much that I know we can talk about. I know you talk about mentorship. You do, do you mentor others? Do you do mentorship for youth?
Yeah, we do. We do mentorship. We also do internships, particularly at Waya. And any given semester, we're doing about 10 to 15 interns from a variety of different schools and colleges. And I do a lot of mentorship as well, either directly or indirectly. Directly, speaking like we're speaking, of course, that becomes a little bit harder to mentor multiple different people because just of the time. So we do a lot of collective mentorship. So one of the things that we like to do is, for example, get a group of young people, get a group of entrepreneurs and say, what problems are you facing either in your life or in your business? And then together bring technicians or people who have walked that particular path and help unpack or address these problems. So we like to do that a lot. We offer a lot of those resources for free. We record them much like this show. So other people who may not have been part of that are able to go and watch them. And if they have additional questions related to that, we're usually at a reach. We're quite reachable, and if people write to us, we do usually respond. It may take a while for us to respond, but we do respond depending on the wave of messages that we get. But no, we really like mentorship. It's part and parcel. If I have seen far, or if I have reached far, it's not because of the extent of my reach, but it's larger because I stood on the shoulders of giants, from my parents to other people, and the least I can do is do that for someone else.
Beautiful, beautiful. And is there, are you going to give us information on that, or do you want us to do this?
Yeah. Oh, you mean on the mentorship? Yeah,
Yeah.
on the mentorship. So we have a few for youth. We do that through an organization, an NGO that we started called Youth Engagement Society, called Yes. But if anyone reaches out on my email and asks for these resources, we will definitely be able to give them. Most of them are already in the public domain. So if you, for example, if it's financial resources, we have those on Finance Dissected. We have a blog that focuses on this particular thing. We have a part that we show every Monday called Momentum Mondays, where we really focus on mentoring, and we try to solve issues, at least based on what our audience is asking. So, for example, overcoming challenges, how do you build resilience? And then we talk about that particular topic, and we give very candid examples, if it's in business, if it's in, if it's at the individual level. So we like to do that as well. So you can find that on Waya and also on my Instagram, so on Momentum Mondays, and there are always bite-sized information that we like to mentor people with.
Oh, I like that. Yes, I will definitely link all that information in my show notes. I'm sure my listeners would love to find all these good nuggets from you. So, David, thank you. Thank you again. Have a very good evening. I'm sure it's evening over
Certainly. Thank you so much.
Anytime. So there you have it. I hope this conversation with David was as impactful to you as it was to me. And what I love about David is his ability to remain humble. Whether he's flying to Belgium to buy chocolate for his wife, or he's having conversations with presidents, or having conversations with the youth, David has remained humble. Leave a comment and let me know what your takeaway was, and tag me and David on social media. So until next time, take care.